All right, we are back with the Talk Like No One's Listening podcast, episode 21. We made it to 21. The podcast is old enough to get fucked up, so let's celebrate. This episode, I thought for the past few days about an idea of a topic because I want to make sure each episode is something worth listening to and has some kind of info that's useful, maybe, or just something to think about for me and for anyone listening. So the name of this episode is Don't Say Just, that's going to be my goal for this episode, is to go through the entire hour of speaking off the top of my head without saying the word as much as possible. I don't know if I could possibly do it without saying it once, but let's see. So this idea has been in my head ever since I've been doing this podcast, because I listened back to it afterwards, and it's an interesting thing to listen back to yourself speaking when it's not something you usually do. And you do notice how you speak to how you sound to other people. So in the pretty much every episode I've done so far, I'm pretty sure I've said plenty of times. And every time that I've listened back to these episodes, I have always been annoyed with myself saying too many times. And I find myself being bothered when I hear other people do it, even though everybody does it all the time. But because I started focusing on it for myself, listening to see if I'm doing it, it made it to where I was paying attention to it all the time to everybody. And it started out with me just having the idea of, as a speaking skill, to try to develop this, to be able to not say unless I'm purposely trying to say the word like right now. But it was something that I decided I want to try to just be maybe a better public speaker, whatever, and just see if I can manage to remember to not say And it's really hard to do that, which is why I talk and I take these pauses, because every time I have the urge to want to say I just stop myself, and then what you get is just a pause. You get silence. Sometimes I feel like silence is better than hearing that 100 times throughout a whole podcast. So anyways, I've been working at it. I think gradually, as each episode has gone by, I've gotten better at it. But I started to think about it in a different way also, that when the thing that I'm doing by, in a way, filtering myself and what I'm saying is to develop my thinking process, my thought process in a way, because what the word represents is just the sound of your brain thinking. It's just you're processing, you're going from one idea to the next. Something pops in your head, an idea, then you want to say something, you want to ask a question. So you say as your brain is transitioning to the next thought, which I'm pretty sure that's what is happening for everybody. And by somehow paying attention to that, And by trying to catch myself from not saying that word, it forced me to think a bit harder and be a little bit more focused on what I'm saying. And whatever I'm saying is what I'm thinking. So that means I'm focusing a bit more on my own thoughts and my thought process and how I can piece together these monologues that I do, where I'll have a general idea of something that I want to talk about, and then I just go freestyle for however long, for an hour or so, and I'm building and building upon my dialogue, and I'm trying to explain something clearly, speak clearly, and then also make sure that there's the next thing coming, so that I don't get like halfway through this podcast and then I literally have nothing to think about or nothing to say. Because that's not horrible. I can just hit pause and then think for a second, a minute, and then hit record again and pick up. But I like to keep this as part of the mental exercise, to keep this one long take, because that's the challenge of it. It's easy to not say if you edit your podcast, if you edit what you're saying. So there's not much challenge in that. But I think the benefit that I've seen in myself from doing this is that I have noticed just the change in myself, how I think, how I act in certain ways. And maybe, there you go, number one. So how does this relate to music? Maybe you might be wondering, since this is kind of like a music podcast. And I have noticed that it is something that it's something that has been helping me, because I think being a good engineer or just a good music professional person working in this field, it's a very unique type of skill to try to develop, because the creation process of music is unique in itself, and each person that does it has their own way of doing it. And that's the unique part, is that there's no like blanket method that you could just use over and over again to get things done. And by the simple act of trying to not say creates this way of thinking that is a bit more deliberate and thoughtful in how you just operate and do your job, or just operate in life, where it's important to stay fluid and be adaptable and be present in the moment, because music is doing what it's doing in a way. Yeah, people are creating it, but the way I see it, music is just coming through people. So it's all about catching this stream as it's coming. So because the stream is fluid and constantly flowing and changing, you have to be able to adapt to what it's doing. And that might be with your own thoughts in your head, ideas that you have, or if you're the engineer or producer working with an artist and they're doing what they're doing, and you want to be able to keep up with them moment to moment and read what's going on and where the direction is going, and make a decision on what you're going to do. And it's important to make the right decision, because that's all our lives really end up being, is just the sum total of all our decisions. So if you want to break it down to like your whole life, or just make it focus in just on your work, the good things and bad things that you of your where you're at in life or in your career That's the sum total of all the decisions you made. So by, in a way, exercising your brain to not say gets you a bit more in shape to be better at decision making in the moment, to be able to read a situation, feel it out, know what is the thing that you need to do to keep the flow going, keep the session going with the client, or even if you're just by yourself mixing, to know what is the next step that you need to take based on what you're feeling in the moment. So it's like this balance of being very thoughtful and technical, but also being fluid and just being creative, just trying to be equally in both. And what I realized in this process of last, I guess, few months of, or I don't know how long exactly this has been on my mind, but in the process of trying to do this podcast and having this plan in my head to just do it this way, I have come this far where I know I've gotten better and better at it, and I've seen how I have felt and seen like how it has changed me when I'm working with people, either with people or by myself mixing or producing. I feel like I make good decisions fairly quick, right on the spot. And it's something that, for example, I had done a previous episode on the making of Jaden Smith's Iris album, which I was the engineer on. So I can go on and on about talking about the making of that album. But what happened during the process of that album was controlled chaos. It was us in a studio for days and days, for a long period of time, like just consistently in there, and just ideas just going, different people in there, collaborators, all the people that you hear on the album, all the different producers, and just the millions of ideas that Jaden has. They're going constantly, moving. Everything is moving. And everybody has an idea, they throw it out, and me as an engineer, I have to take all these ideas that are being thrown at me, and I have to implement them. I have to make them real as fast as possible, because that's just the nature of ideas. They come and go. So if you can't make something happen fairly quick, and that idea passes, and an artist, creative person loses that small little window of inspiration, sometimes it never comes back. And then you never know what you might have missed out on. But I do know that I can say for sure that I think I was able to catch all the right moments of the whole creative process. I never felt like I majorly fucked up or I missed something. It's like, now that I think back on it, it was exactly this thing that I was talking about, that because I'm in a studio, a real studio, and we had like a real setup in the studio. We had like a whole drum set mic'd up, we had guitars set up, we had keyboards, we had producers sending beats, we had Jaden doing his vocals, we had multiple people doing vocals on different songs, bouncing around constantly. There was a lot of activity going on. So there you go. Well, is the same as Fuck it, it's the same thing. So there was also a piano that we had mic'd up. I had a lot of outboard gear just plugged into the console, ready to go for whatever things might come up. So there was a lot of options. There was a lot of pieces to the whole machine, and I had to keep track of all of it so that whenever somebody had an idea to do one thing or another, I could get onto that thing and get straight to it. And where they have an idea, they want to do something. Oh, like, let's do it right now. I'm ready. I got a track. It's record ready. Signal's good because we already checked everything. And the ideas come to people, and the ideas get recorded immediately. We didn't lose anything. A lot of the best moments of this album were these moments that did happen just quick. Just all of a sudden, in 1 minute, a great idea exists and didn't before. And there are things that just ended up in the final versions of these songs that a lot of people don't know. Well, I mean, whatever I'm going to say. You have all these moments that are very unique moments that were really like lightning in a bottle. They weren't like totally thought out. And this process allowed for this type of creative process to work. And so from my experience, this is my one major example of how I can say the practice of trying to not say can potentially help you greatly in your life. And that's my TED Talk. If I ever, that was my audition to do a TED Talk. So thank you. See, if I morph the word like I just did, I technically didn't say I feel like I have made lots of bad decisions in my life, and probably will continue to do so because I'm a human. But I'm at least actively trying to make better decisions. I'm actively trying to be a better decision maker, just like people are actively trying to work out, eat healthy, things like that, to take care of themselves, to improve the quality of their life. And through doing this podcast, this is one thing that I stumbled upon that for me has been a thing that I have seen results with, that has helped me in my life. And like I said, I will continue to make plenty of mistakes, and that's important to do that. That's how you learn, that's how you grow. So I'm not trying to say that bad decisions are necessarily bad, but in certain cases, certain situations, like a working situation where you're being paid to do a job for somebody and they have expectations of you to be able to do your job well, then let's say, okay, in that case, bad decisions are definitely bad. Just don't do them. That's not the place where we are trying to learn on the job. We need to know already how to do our job. Now, you could do creatively, you could do trial and error. Let's try something creatively that we've never done before. Let's experiment. Let's have fun. Let's see what happens when we do XYZ. But as far as you being able to do your job as a technician, creative technician, people need you to know what the fuck you're doing, basically. And another thing that I thought back on was that skill is important. Being talented at your job is important. But what I felt like what seemed important to me more was good decision-making skills, because that is the thing that got me through this project successfully as an engineer for the album and other things I've done since, is that it's more of the proper decision-making that I have developed that brought me success than being technically skilled. Like, I had to record lots of live instruments. We did a lot of drum tracking for this album. And that is not something I have a lot of experience with. Of course, I know how to do it, and I feel confident that I can do it. But as far as the percentage of all my years and hours of doing this, a lot of it has not been with recording drums and recording like a live band. And what I decided was that it doesn't matter. Let me just make sure I'm not fucking up and make sure everything's ready to go and ready to record. And as long as we can just hit record and get stuff recorded, that's more important than being really technical and having like a really cool, intricate, developed setup for technical engineering setup for recording these drums and these live instruments and miking technique and, going through, picking out different pieces of outboard gear to run it through and things like that, right? To me, I just didn't want to think about that. In the moment, that was not important. And in the end, it wasn't important either. I was able to get the sound of the drums. That is what everybody liked for each particular song, whoever the producer was or whatever it may be, whatever the song was. I feel like everything sounded like what we all wanted it to sound like. And I'll say that if you put me up against a bunch of other engineers that are well experienced with doing live instruments and doing rock music and things like that have way more experience doing that, I don't feel like inferior to them, because I feel like what they might have over me with technical skills and information and knowledge, I make up for with this decision-making skill I have when it comes to me sitting in that engineer seat. When we were recording the drums, one of the drummers, we had multiple different drummers coming in, and one of the guys that was in there, he called a friend or FaceTimed them to show them the setup that we had on the drums of the mics, and he was showing him to get his friend's advice. I guess his friend was a very experienced metal engineer. I mean, like heavy metal music engineer. So all he did was record drums day after day. That's all he did. That was his main thing. So he was asking his friend his advice on this drum setup, mic setup that we had. And then this guy on the phone, on the FaceTime, was basically just shitting all over it, just saying everything we're doing was wrong. Mics were in the wrong position. We're using the wrong types of mics. We should do this. We should do that. And this guy was just super opinionated and just telling us that this is how you got to do it. And I didn't talk directly to the guy. I was in the room. I heard them talking about it on FaceTime. And I just heard the guy out. I listened to what he said, and I thought to myself, okay, let me just see what this guy has to say. He seems to be very experienced. At least he's saying he is. His friend is saying he is. So who knows? I know I don't have a ton of experience, so I'm not going to assume I know the right way either. But a lot of the things that he was saying that we needed to do, when I just thought about it, I did not feel like it was anything critical. It was not something that was really going to make a huge, major difference in how these drums were going to sound. And I basically didn't change anything after that. The drummer, he asked me to make some of these changes that his friend was recommending, and I don't remember what happened. I think I just kind of waited and people forgot about it. We got busy with stuff, and I just didn't do any of that stuff. And in the end, the recordings that we got, the mixes that I had done on these drum recordings, I was very happy with them. I didn't feel like I was lacking anything. I had needed to do more in the process. And I just felt better about trusting myself that I know how to do whatever needs to be done, whether I really know how to do it or not. I just feel like as long as I am making proper decisions in the whole big picture of what we're doing, of being in the studio, making an album and making all these songs, as long as I'm making the right decisions, I feel like that is the thing that's gonna carry the whole thing. So I didn't really think about any of this in the moment during the time. This is all stuff, which is what I have come to really enjoy about this podcast, is that I will speak about all these things. I'll think back on them, and I'll have lots of ideas and memories and afterthoughts about things while I'm just talking. It's just coming to my head as I'm speaking it. And there are things that a lot of the time I did not even know were thoughts in my head. So it's a cool way to just air out your brain, shake off the dust, clean out stuff, and just sort it all out. It's been a nice type of therapy for myself in a way. And I would suggest to anybody else listening, if you have any curiosity to do a podcast, or even if you don't, because here's the thing. I started this, the reason why I call this Talk Like No One's Listening is because I did start this to do it just for myself. Just to try it out, not tell anybody, not promote it, not really tell anybody personally. I mean, a couple of people, but really not tell anybody about it, because I did want to do it for myself, just to see, can I do it? Of course I could do it, but what would it be like? What would the experience be like? And what might happen? I just was curious. Curiosity has been really the biggest inspiration for me in my life. It's been my compass, really, since I was younger, as far as leading me through the path of life that I've gone through. I just follow my curiosity, and I never stop being curious, because you learn one thing and then another thing appears and you're like, oh, what's that now? Then that takes you down another rabbit hole and you're like, oh, so what's this? And it keeps going and going. And I think to stay curious all the time means that, well, by being curious all the time and exploring your curiosity, it will always lead you to new experiences and new things to learn about, new pieces of wisdom, like what is going on right now with this podcast. So from my personal experience, I really enjoyed doing this, and I've discovered a lot of things about myself, developed certain types of mental skills, like what the whole point of this episode is, and it's helped me greatly. And I would suggest anyone else to try it, because it's so simple to do. Literally, you just talk and you hit record on anything. If you don't have any nice equipment or whatever, it's not a big deal. Really, just go in a quiet room, a quiet place, and just use your phone and do a voice memo. That's totally fine. As long as you can, for the most part, hear what you're saying. It doesn't have to be some type of pristine recording. By the way, right now, I kind of am, for a podcast, I'm doing a bit of an overkill. Not overkill, but I'm doing a setup that's not really necessary for a podcast, because this is just, I'm in a hotel room right now. I'm on the road. We're on tour. And I don't have my usual mic that I use for recording, which is the Shure SM7, which is like the most popular mic for podcasters and broadcast radio, things like that, because it's designed for that. It's perfect. So it gets a good clean recording of your voice, and it's not so sensitive that it picks up all the small sounds of the room, all the sounds of like the air conditioner, of fans, of just like I can hear my pants as I just move my legs on this chair. I'm hearing my breathing in my nose right now, which has made me feel very claustrophobic. This has kind of been a challenge so far, this episode, is that this mic that I'm using is a Slate Digital condenser mic, which is meant to be super sensitive and high fidelity and pick up all the details for somebody that's singing or rapping or doing vocals over music or something like that, which is great. That's what you want to have in that type of situation, to get a good vocal recording for a music recording. But for just talking in a room by yourself, it's not the way to go, because like that, I don't need the sound of my breathing to be that loud. I don't need the sound of me just moving in a chair to be heard. And I have headphones on, so it's like it's in my ear even more. So everything is super sensitive. So I'm not breathing properly right now because I'm like self-conscious. I don't want like loud breathing noises on the mic, but I have to breathe in order to be able to talk. So I'm feeling like I'm suffocating a little bit. So let me just, so I don't die doing a podcast. What a way to go out, huh? If you're recording a podcast and then you die on the mic, and you just have a recording of your death, and hopefully whatever you're saying leading up to your death was not stupid. What a funny thought. Anyways. Yeah, so that's a weird thing about hearing your voice like that. Hearing your voice when you speak into a high quality studio condenser microphone and you have headphones on and there's no music and it's just you. And you can literally hear the sound of the air in the room. You hear the sound of molecules of air moving around. It's like maybe this is how dogs and cats hear. I don't know. Anyways. Yeah, podcasting. I think this is the 21st episode I've done, so maybe it's time to tell people about it, because now I'm getting to the point where I feel like I have points to make. I've gone through this whole experience of doing this for myself, which has been great. And now that there are pieces of knowledge and wisdom that I've picked up over the process, on top of me just trying to share my knowledge of music engineering and production and career advice and things like that, that's something I would like to continue to share to help people. But the unexpected thing is that I have this other layer of things that I can talk about too, which is the benefits of podcasting for your mental health. And I could see that it could help a lot of people, because today's age, so many people maybe everybody talks, of course, they talk, but maybe we don't talk as much as people used to before we had all this technology, where so much of our communication with other people is through text. And text is still text. It's the words you're saying, but to speak with your own voice and have expression and have all these intricate little details about how you talk that communicate a whole nother level of things when you're talking with somebody. It's just a lot more dense information to share back and forth with a person. Like when you hear somebody say a word, say a sentence, you read the sentence in a text from that person versus them saying that out loud. You know a lot more about what that means. What's the significance of what they're saying, because you can hear a bit more of mood, tone of voice, things like that will tell you something about what they're saying. It can totally change the meaning of it. It could be, you can know if they're just being serious and straightforward. You know if they're being sarcastic. You know if they're being, maybe they're trying to hide something. Maybe they're trying to manipulate you. Things like that, which you can't pick up on that kind of stuff in text always. It's a lot harder. So by podcasting, you're making up for the fact that you might be missing out on all this dialogue with people. You get it back you make up for it. I mean, it's like people go to the gym to make up for the lack that we don't have any physical activity in our daily lives. That's not a natural part of our lifestyle, is to be active just in what we do. We sit down in cars, we sit down on trains, buses, planes, we sit down at work, we sit down at home on the couch. So we're not out in the forest, running through the forest, looking for food, hunting animals, foraging, hiking up mountains, trying to find water. We're not doing any of that shit. We're not riding horses. We're just not. So people make up for it by going to the gym. And then you have a very focused, dedicated period to just do physical activity to maintain your physical health. And I feel like this podcasting thing is like that for your brain. At least the part of your brain that you use when you're talking and communicating. Am I better at communicating because of this? I don't know. I feel like, yeah. I mean, that's the point of what I've been saying this whole episode, is that there's an added benefit to your mental skills through this. So I would encourage people to do, not necessarily a podcast, but just to talk more, focus on what you're saying when you do talk with people. See if you can manage to not say in your dialogue with people or yourself. Because when you do that, you speak, it's like what's happening right now. I'm a lot more self-conscious about my speaking and my breathing and all that because it's ramped up. I'm focused on it because I have this hi-fi mic and I'm wearing headphones, so I hear so much more details. I'm paying more attention to it. And by recording yourself talk for an hour and listening back as a practice, it's doing the same thing. It's like you're just putting this awareness on yourself from outside of yourself. You get to hear yourself how other people hear it, so you get some feedback. No, I'm just saying the vowels. I wasn't saying A-E-I-O-U. But you get this feedback on yourself and how you talk, which is how you think. And taking the time to focus more and put more awareness on how you think and what you think and why you think the things that you do, I think is important, because the minds that we have are many times not our own. The minds that we live with and we operate with are not ours, meaning that we start as little kids and we get raised by the adult world, parents, teachers, society, TV, media. They are all teaching you things about how you should be thinking. What's good, what's bad, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's good and evil, things like that. And for the most part, people just accept whatever it is that they are taught and given as they grow up. But look at the world. It's fucked up. So let's take a second to stop and say, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we live the way that we do? Why do we believe the things that we believe? Who taught us? Why did they teach us that? Is it worthwhile? Is it meaningful? Is it important? Is it useful? And, it's time to like question, everything, because what I have come to realize as an adult who now is a parent and I'm raising a child is that nobody knows what the fuck is going on. There are no adults in this world. Everybody's children. We just get older, but we're all children. And a lot of people, they like to believe that they're an adult and they're responsible and they're grown up, but there's no such thing. Nobody knows, because like I said, look at the world. Look at what's going on. Look at the decisions that are made by the people that run the world from all over the world. It's all fucked up. And it's pretty easy to see that it's fucked up. But yet, things don't change because the people that are in power are the people in power. So, in order for things to change on that level requires people to just really all be independent thinkers and to take a look at their own thoughts and question them and reevaluate all the time. Don't settle into one way of thinking, because life doesn't stop. Like I said, this stream of creativity that creates music that we all tap into, that just keeps flowing. It's a river and it never stops. And that's like life. That's life. It's the same thing. So if you want to be a rock that sitting in the middle of a flowing river, you're just a rock then. You just sunk and you're just there at the bottom. And eventually that water's going to flow over you and wash you away and you'll be nothing. But yeah, obviously, it's a big thing in the news. I mean, all the news, pretty much all the news is fucked up news. So it's plain to see by pretty much everybody that the world is fucked up and it's going in a fucked up direction. So the people that are in power over, the entire history of humanity, it's all their decisions, collective decisions over time that have got the world to the point and place that it is right now. And obviously it's fucked up. So can't leave it up to them to make the decisions, can we? The most important thing is everybody needs to start making their own decisions about everything. About every thought you have in your head. Try it. It's hard. It's fucking hard. But at least if you just plant the seed in your own mind that you want to try to just reevaluate yourself from your own judgment, from your own perspective and your own values of what you see is right and wrong, then once you do that and you get comfortable with doing that and that's normal for you, then nobody can tell you shit. Then you actually start getting closer to maybe being a grown-up if you do that for a while. But like I said, I think 100 years of being a human living on this planet is not enough to say you're grown up. There's way too much to life. It's way too complex. That's how I see it now. That's how I see life. And because of that, it fuels my curiosity even more to know that, okay, till the time that I am gone, until my last day living, I don't want to stop being curious. I don't want to stop exploring and stop wondering about this and wondering about that and wanting to learn something new and discover something new. Because there's no end. There's no end. So why just, settle? Why do you settle into a way of thinking where a lot of people, by the time they're, I guess, middle age or something, that's pretty much set in stone. Like, oh, that's the person that they are, and that's who they're going to be for the rest of their life. I'm not really interested in having the exact same day over and over again until I'm old and wrinkled and I've been basically living the same routine over and over again. That's this shit's all a video game. So do you want to spend the entire time playing a video game and not leaving the fucking whatever called, when you start a game and you start off in the first stage of wherever you're a first person RPG type of game or something, and you're in your small village and then you're about to set out for your adventure. It's like, are you going to just stay in that fucking small village and never leave and play the game? Yeah. By the way, I don't think I'm that smart or wise or insightful. So I say these things maybe they seem like they're deep or I'm trying to be deep, but I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. So don't believe me, which is the whole point. It's just think about things your own way. The only thing I could say is if you're not thinking about things your own way, I suggest you try it. That's my one offering to anybody listening to this podcast, which there are tons of podcasts out there. So on one hand, you might feel like, there's tons of podcasts out there. The world doesn't need another podcast. Yes and no, because the best podcast of all time has not happened yet. So there you go. As many as there are in the world, it's relatively young. They haven't been around for very long. So, excuse me. It's still in its infancy. And who knows? Right now, people just talk, basically, for the most part. Either with other people, they interview. Some people make stories. They piece together. They make an essay in a way. They do research. They do stories. They report. Some people just do comedy. Some people, whatever. But for the most part, it's just people talking. And talking alone, that can just keep going on and on and on and really have no end, because we'll never run out of things to talk about. But there's even just the format of a podcast. It's recorded audio. That's the only, I guess that's the only requirement, is that you have to record some type of audio. And I guess it should be people. I don't know if there's a podcast that exists that's just recorded sounds that don't make sense. I don't know if anybody's on that next level yet to just do non-dialogue podcasting. But that's just, for example, that's how you know. Maybe the best podcast of all time is yet to come, and it's going to be a podcast with no talking. Who knows? So just, be curious. Try stuff. If you feel like you want to do it, do it. This is awesome because literally anybody can do it. It's like signing up for the gym. Literally anybody can go. just about every single person you know can just go to a gym and sign up and start doing some type of exercise. And that's just like this. And who knows what will result from people on a large scale doing this kind of stuff. Not that everybody needs to be heard. Not that everybody has anything good to say, useful to say, interesting, entertaining, funny. Not everybody does. But that's not the point. It's for just personal benefit. Just like not everybody that goes to the gym is getting completely shredded and looks like a superhero. But as long as they're healthier than they were before they signed up for the gym, then that's all that matters. If it's giving some type of improvement to life, that's all that matters. And yeah, it's crazy. The world's crazy. That's all I got to say. I don't know. I might just end on that a little bit early because talking about the world and all that shit, and I don't know, it's a big topic. And at this point, I don't know what else I would say going off into that tangent. So I'll just say thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Like No One's Listening. Maybe soon I might start promoting this lightly. Or at least, I'll just admit it. I'll come out of the podcast closet and be like, hey, I do this. And everyone's going to be like, what? And I'll be like, yeah. But thank you. This has been episode 21. I'm glad I made it to 21. And I'm going to keep going. So thank you for listening. Take care. Peace.